Hello everyone, I am Siddharthan. In this video, let's solve the fourth LeetCode problem. I'm in the problems tab in LeetCode site and I'm going to sort the questions based on the difficulty. And we have already solved three problems in this easy section. Now let's solve the fourth problem, which is finding the longest common prefix. So this is what we'll be working on, and this is fairly a easier problem. So we have this question over here. So it says that write a function to find the longest common prefix string amongst an array of strings. So it's basically the input data will be a list that contains a few number of strings, and in that we need to find the most common prefix. If there is no common prefix, return an empty string. So prefix, we know that those are the kind of letters that start at the beginning of the word, right? So in this case, if you see this, we need to find the initial letters that are common in all the strings. So if you see this one, we have the words flower, flow, and flight, right? And the common word in all these three strings is FL, FL, and FL, because after that, so we have FLO in first two strings, but in the last string we don't have that. So the common string or common prefix in all these three strings would be FL. If we don't find any common string, just like the one that we have over here, so we have a dog, race, car, and car. So car is basically the suffix, but again we don't have any common prefix for all the three strings, so we have to return a null string. So this is the output in this case. Now let's write a Python function that can solve this particular problem. So I'll open this PyCharm so that I can easily explain you the approach that we are going to take. So here what we are going to do is, let's say that we have that same list of flower, flow, and flight. So from this list, let's call this list as maybe A, or I'll call this as list1 is equal to this flower, flow, and flight. From this list, I'm going to find the string that is smallest of them all. So in this case, if you see, we have flower, flow, and flight. So out of this, the smallest string is flow because it has only 4 letters. The other words has like more than 4 letters. So I would choose this as my shortest string. So let me call this as shortest string, which is equal to flow. Now, once I have this shortest string, I'm going to take each letter in this shortest string and compare it with all the three strings that we have over there in this particular list. So basically, first I'll take this F and see that, and also I'll mention the position of the string. So let's say that F is present in index, let's say 0, right? So I would check if the first string flower as F in the position. Yeah, so let's say that we call this as list1, and list1 of 0 would be your flower word, right? So list1 of 0 is your flower. Let's call this flower, and in this flower I'll check if F is the first string. So similarly for all the other strings, and then we do the same thing for the next string. So the next the next letter, which is L. So L as an index of 1. So we kind of basically find the smallest string and iterate through each of the letters in the smallest string and check if it's present in the other strings of the list. So that's the thing that we are doing over here. And let's say that we have this O in first and second string, it's not present in the third string. In that case, we will stop then and there, and we will just return F and L because that's present in all the three strings. If we don't find any common string, then we are going to return a null string for this. So this is the approach that we are going to take, and let's see how we can solve this. So I have this check.py file where I'll write this code. So let's create a function and call this as longest common prefix, maybe the same name that we have over here. Okay. Yeah, longest common prefix, and we have to pass strings as the input value. Longest prefix, and let's call this strs, the input list, which has like a list of strings, right? And here I'll say shortest string. Shortest string is equal to strs. Okay, I can use this minimum, which is a built-in function in Python, and I'll say strs comma p is equal to len. Okay, so this is what we are doing. So again, minimum is like a built-in function that finds if you pass a list, right, or any iterable object. So in this case, iterable object is a list. So it will go through this list and find the smallest string, or basically the string or a word with minimum letters, and the factor that it's going to consider is length. So it basically checks the length of the string in this particular list and return the string that has like the minimum number. So maybe I'll show you how this would give the output. So let's call this as OP as output and longest common prefix, and let's call this STRS is equal to the same thing, right? So flower, flow and flight. I'll copy this and let's pass this STRS here, and let me just return this shortest string. This is just to show you like what this minimum function will return, and then I'll print this OP. Let's run this. So you're seeing it returns low because it has like the minimum numbers, right? And if you have, let's say, two flows, it will just return the first minimum value that it's seeing. So it will just see flow as well if you run this as well. Okay, so that's about it. So first step is, as I said, we are finding the minimum number. So later what we have to do is iterate it over the other strings and see like how far it is like kind of having those common prefixes. Okay, so the next step I'm going to say for I comma char or character in enumerate shortest string. Okay, so this basically, first I can also print and show this in character to you. So this iterates over this shortest string, which is like flow in this case, and it will return I is nothing but it will return the index of that particular character and the character itself. So that's what enumerate does. So it returns the index and the element itself. So if you run this through a list, right, if you run this through strings list, the I would be the index of a particular element, and then you would get a element. In this case, if you iterate this over a string, you would get the index of the letter and the letter itself or the character. So again, I'll run this, run this, and I'll show you the print statement. Here we are not looking at the output. So we have 0 and F, right? So character in shortest string, okay, we are getting 0 and F. Okay, so we should have this return statement outside, so that's why it's printing like only 0 and F. So your for loop would terminate, or basically your function would kind of complete once it has seen the return statement. So when I run this, so when we put this shortest string in the enumerate, I would take the index and char would basically take each individual letters. So we pass the shortest string, which is flow, and we printing like these things. Okay, so this is why we have this for loop, and once we have this for loop, we are going to put an if condition saying if any s of I is not equal to char for s in strs. Okay, and then return shortest string. So finally we can return the other one as well. Okay, so this is the code. This is even like the complete code. So this would solve this. So let's understand this. So here we have a for loop, and this for loop returns the index and the character at each iteration, right? So that we have seen here. And then we have an if condition, and this if condition is we are checking basically the character as well as the position. And within this if condition we have another for loop, and this for loop is for iterating over the list. So if you just think about this for s in strs, right, basically this for loop runs multiple times, or let's say 3 times in this case, within this if condition itself. So it checks if f is present in the first position for the 3 strings present in this list. So that's what happens within this. If any such cases, if in any of these strings f is not the first letter, then it's going to run into this if condition, because the condition is not equal to, right? So it kind of runs here and say that the shortest string of this particular variable, so it shouldn't be 1, so this should be I. Okay, yeah. So this if condition won't run if all these words, let's say that all these words as flow in it at start, this if condition won't run at all. We would return the shortest string saying flow. Okay, and let's say in this case the shortest prefix is fl because fl is only present here, right? So what would happen is when it runs, this for loop runs for the first time, character would be f and I would be 0. So you put this in enumerate, so you get 0 and f here, and you check the if condition. So within this if condition, the for loop runs multiple times, this particular for loop. So when it runs for the first time, yes takes the value flower, right? And within this flower, we are going to check in a particular position, which is I, with and the I value would be 0, right? So s of I is nothing but flower of I or flower of 0. So we check if f is not equal to character, which is again f. So this if condition won't be satisfied, so we won't run it. So similarly, in the next iteration of this for loop, we check it for flow and then we check it for flight. So as long as you find a match for a particular word or a particular letter, this return statement won't run because this if condition won't be satisfied. So this condition would be satisfied when it is not equal to, right? So whenever you are not finding a f in this 3 string, and when this particular for loop runs for the second time, in that case I will take the value of 1 and char will take the value of fail. Now again we come to this if condition. Again this for loop runs for multiple time, where at each iteration of the for loop it will check if L is present in index 1 of all the 3 strings that we have in this list. So think about it. In the next iteration, yes takes this for loop runs multiple times, right? And in the first iteration of this for loop, yes takes the value flower and car value is L and I value is 1. So we have this yes and we have this yes here, and we put this flower here. Flower of I or flower of 1 is nothing but L, right? So we are just indexing or slicing the string based on the I value. So we check if L is not equal to this character. So we do this repeatedly, and whenever we are not finding a match in all the 3 strings, we are going to execute this statement, which is returning shortest string of 5. What would happen in this shortest string is at each iteration we are kind of like slicing the string. So let's say I can maybe show this to you in a different file. So let's call this as check2. So we know that shortest string is equal to flow, right? So let's take that as our example. And when I say print shortest string of colon 1, this will print me ef, right? Because we are just like printing everything that's before the index 1. This is simple string slicing. When I put 0 here, it will return nothing. Basically it is returning a string which is a null string. You can maybe put this type keyword in order to make sure that it is returning something, right? So you can run this and this would say there is a string in it which is a null string, right? So that's what we are basically doing when we kind of return the shortest string of I. So when it runs for the first time, we return shortest string of I, let's say shortest string of 1, and that would return f, right? And when we again run it for the next time, we would just say 2, and now we would return fl. So that would be the output in this case. Again, remember that this line will be executed only when there is like no match of the word, because we are having a not equal to comparison. So the other thing that we can do here is put this in a debugger and understand like how this code is kind of running. So I'll put this in this for loop and run this in debugger mode. So this should stop in this breakpoint, right? Okay, there is an error. Oh, I have a dot over here. Okay, let's rerun this. This has stopped, and we know that the shortest string value is flow, and strings is a list that contains flower, flow, and flight. So let's step into our code where it would run each line separately. So here I value is 0 and car value is f, right? And now we are checking the if condition. So when you check the if condition, so we have a list iterator and car value is 0, I value is again 1. So we may not be able to see it clearly. So it basically checks if okay, here you are seeing this yes value, right? So which is flower. So here we compare s of I. S of I is nothing but flower of 0. So flower of 0 is f. So we are comparing it, f is equal to this particular f. So that's what's happening, and in this case this kind of condition satisfies. So when we run this again, we are seeing that s takes the value flow because that's the second iteration, and again f is the first letter, so this if condition won't be satisfied. Again we run this, now it takes flight and so on. So this process goes on. So if you see the next time I click this step into, it won't go to this line because the if condition is not satisfied, because we are only looking for not equal to, but we are finding f in all these strings. So this condition is satisfied. So again I'll click this. So you are now going into this for loop again. So this process continues for L as well. But the moment you have a character as O, right, now you don't find a match in flight. So you will find a match in flower and flow. Just look at this character and ES in this case. So first we have this flower. So again we are kind of matching it. So we are going into the next iteration. So we have this flow. When I run this the next time, we would see it going into the shortest string, because in flight the third letter is I and it's not O. So this is the place where we would run this string and we would return shortest string of I, and shortest string of I is nothing but I, in this case 2. So we would return F and L. So this is how we are basically finding the most common prefix in the given string. So I hope you are clear with this. Maybe you can just rewatch this video, or just try this code, so it should like make sense. Again, it may sound a bit complex, but it's not. So I'll come back here and paste the code over here. Let's move this indentation and let's see if this works in LeetCode. So first I'll run this in order to make sure that it passes the test cases, and once the test cases are passed, we can so the test cases are passed, and now we can submit it and validate it against other test cases and see if our code is like accepted. Right, so it says accepted, and we have like a really good runtime. So again, we could improve on the memory, but yeah. So this is how we can write this code in order to find the longest common prefix. And I hope you are clear with this, and I'll see you in the next upload. Thanks for watching.